Welcome to Concussion Talk Podcast, episode 108. I'm with Stefan Bianchi. And as always, please go subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and BRAINIAC podcast, which is Stefan's host of that. So on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Google, Spotify, Amazon Music, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. So, and please support me, Concussion Talk, on Patreon. So patreon.com/concussion talk. Concussion talk. Geez, I said that right. And also following on Good Pods. So which is the podcasting app. So search your app store for Good Pods HQ or Good Pods. And then before that, before Stefan and I talk, I will introduce my sponsor, HeadCheck Health. Concussion Talk Podcast is presented by HeadCheck Health. HeadCheck Health bridges the gaps in concussion care through simple, powerful technology. Join organizations like the Canadian Football League, Track Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada, who rely on HeadCheck Health to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headcheckhealth.com for more. Okay, so Stefan, thank you so much. And as I mentioned very briefly, but you are the new host, season 2 host, and even more. But season 2 of these hosts, replacing you can't replace Edina, filling in Medina's stead because she has graduated. But Stefan is a master student at U of T, and he's the host of BRAINIAC podcast with the University of Toronto Concussion Foundation chapter. And I'll actually get him to explain it better because I'm still not one of words now. So Stefan, thanks for hosting. Thanks for being here. And just introduce yourself and say what you're doing at U of T, and just more about the podcast especially for season 2.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks for having me on, Nick. I'm really excited to be here. So in terms of what I'm doing, I'll start with kind of a little bit about myself. So I'm a second-year master's student at U of T in the Faculty of Kinesiology and Physical Education. I'm doing my research under Dr. Michael Hutchison, and what it's looking at, for the most part, is risk of future injury after concussion. So there's a lot of research out there that suggests that, after people get concussions and they're recovered, there's, actually a greater risk of injury when they come back to sport compared to athletes who haven't been concussed. So I'm kind of working on that and, taking a little bit of a spin on it, focusing on sex differences as well to see, are females or male athletes more susceptible to this risk of injury. So that's kind of the approach that I'm taking. That's a bit about me and what I'm doing for school. But in terms of the podcast, like you said, I'm the host of the BRAINIAC podcast, and that's kind of done out of the U of T chapter of the Concussion Legacy Foundation. And I've been a part of the club, I guess, for a couple of years as like a regular member prior to this. But Adina put a post out asking for a podcast host, and I listened to podcasts a lot, like for a number of years, and I always kind of thought, hey, like it would kind of be cool to do that one day. So kind of put my name in the hat there, and I was fortunate enough to be selected, and it's been a great experience so far.
Nice. You've done a great job. So what did you do for undergrad? Do you kinesiology undergrad as well?
Yeah, I did kinesiology at U of T as well. So it was just sort of the natural progression for me to do my master's in that faculty, working with the same professor.
Do you have plans to carry on, do a PhD or anything, or just don't know yet?
Yeah, I'm still thinking. I've only got a little bit of time to figure it out because I'm hoping to be graduating within the next, half year or so.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Trying to keep my options open, but we'll see.
So what we got planned for anything special planned for season 2 of BRAINIAC podcast? Any guests that we should know about or topic?
Nothing's shored up yet, so I don't want to say something and have it not like follow through with it. But really the approach that we want to take this year is more of an educational approach, so to speak. So, season 1 of BRAINIAC was a lot about storytelling and, interviewing different people that had different experiences with concussions and talking about sort of their personal experiences, which, don't get me wrong, is extremely, extremely important. We just wanted to kind of, take a different approach for season 2. I talked with like the president who's there now, and we kind of decided that it would be cool to take more of an educational approach and just talk to people with, a range of expertise and experiences. So for example, in our first episode, we had Dr. Ann Hunt, who's an occupational therapist. So we talked about, the role that OT is playing concussion. The episode that came out just last week, we talked to the volleyball coach at U of T, which was, one of the best discussions I've had in a long time. Just kind of gaining the coach's perspective is, pretty unique because it's not something that's often talked about.
She's been a coach for a long time.
A long time, yeah. So she's seen how concussion has changed from something that really nobody cared about in the 80s and 90s to something now that, there's a big emphasis on. So it was cool to just get her perspective on it. In the future, I'm hoping to have some more medical professionals on, healthcare professionals, taking their perspectives, and I'll just sort of try and recruit a different perspective every month. And so hopefully we can sort of just listen to different people with just cool backgrounds and maybe different backgrounds to look at concussion from different areas. Yeah,
definitely sounds like a good idea. And people don't know Toronto as well as people in Canada do, but Toronto and UT has a good, an amazing plethora of people who can talk about concussions or any real health issues. The University Health Network, which is associated with U of T, am I right? Or is it just university also just the avenue it's on? But
exactly.
Yeah, you have a lot of people, a lot of different departments and hospitals you can reach out to. So definitely get some good information there.
For sure.
So did you play? I know because the concussion generation is mostly. I know you talk to schools. That's what you were saying last year. At least, you don't anymore. But there's a group of students who are out around talking to schools. Like high schools, junior highs, elementary schools. You should say mostly. Or it's better if you, I know it does. We call them here. I think you call them center in Ontario. But so and that's mostly concerned on sports aspect episode. Did you play sports when you were now or in high school or
Yeah, so growing up I played hockey and soccer. Those were kind of my two favorite sports growing up. I played them competitively until the end of high school. And then I stopped. I didn't play hockey anymore, but I reffed hockey. And then I still play soccer recreationally once a week. So just to stay active and just to stay, connected to the sport, because it's a big part of my life, but I don't really play as much anymore, but I used to. Yeah.
Did you ever bike at all? Because your name's like Bianchi. It's like name of
it's the
well-known bike.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I haven't gotten into cycling much. I know I have a couple of friends who cycle and they love it. So maybe it's something I got to get into. I mean, I have the last name for it, right? So
exactly, perfect last name for it. And I guess it's obviously it's Italian, obviously. So obviously, but so soccer is obviously a big passion of yours, and hockey obviously because you're Toronto is just like
exactly.
So so who's your? I know Adina was president last year of Concussion, right?
Yeah, she was a president last year. This year it's I believe she's in 4th year now. Her name's Shreya, I think.
Romana. That was actually her name also. I was sure she was at the
and she's been great. She's been really good in terms of like supporting my ideas for the podcast and just kind of giving her 2 cents on things, and we've kind of collaborated together a lot, and it's been great. I have nothing but great things to say about her.
And you were playing soccer and hockey. You must have more experience with concussions, maybe not personally, but aside from your academic work as well. So
yeah. I mean, I'm very fortunate to not have ever suffered a concussion. So that's something that I'm very very grateful for, because I know how damaging they can be in a sense. But I have definitely been around some of my friends or some of my teammates that have suffered concussions, so I kind of have that perspective on them and just seeing how much they can do to somebody. For example, when I was playing soccer, probably towards the end of when towards when I stopped, and maybe in grade 10 or 11, my goalie took like a ball maybe from 5 yards away, square to the face. And, like,
Oh,
yeah, he didn't get knocked out, but he got back up and
yeah,
it didn't seem right. So, coach took him off. And then when I was sitting on the bench with him, he was like asking me what his name was. Like he didn't even know his
yeah.
own name. So I was like, that was kind of like maybe like the first when I was like kind of old enough to kind of start to understand like, okay, yeah, this is a pretty
Yeah.
serious thing. So it's
So when you study in this study, for your in your lab, do you interview people, or do you look at statistic results, or do you examine actual athletes?
so our lab's actually pretty diverse in terms of what we do. So there's some studies that look at more biological, so like sampling blood and
Yeah,
sampling
yeah,
saliva and looking how like that varies with exercise versus no exercise, like in terms of a randomized control trial. So there's like that biological aspect,
yeah.
and then there's also a pretty big emphasis now on our in our lab with sort of more practical things, so like developing protocols and
All right.
developing return to play, like activity protocols to suit different symptom clusters and whatnot. So that's kind of been a big focus of our lab because our supervisor, like the professor who runs the lab, Dr. Hutchison, has actually developed his own app for recovery that's launched pretty recently. So like a lot that goes into that is developing exercise plans, better understanding exercise and how it relates to concussion. So that what I would say is sort of the main focus of our lab. But like I said, we have a pretty diverse range of projects going on top of that.
So have you found anything in your research stuff this so far that indicates anything different? Do you think, not to give away results or speak before you finish
Yeah.
researching, but I mean, have you noticed any during the course of your research? Have you noticed anything that you were surprised by?
Um, well, my thesis is, still underway. I haven't
Yeah,
gotten to the
yeah.
analysis part, so I, can't give you an answer to my research question.
Nor should you? Yeah,
Yeah, but what I did in my undergrad research, which was, pretty interesting, is I looked at something called like delayed symptom onset. So, as the name suggests, when you get hit in the head or you experience a concussive event, the symptoms don't always onset like right away. You don't always feel them immediately. Sometimes they take 15, 20, an hour, even a day later. And I sort of looked at that, and it was interesting to see that it was like, I think, safe to say that, it's higher than almost 25% or around 25% of cases where that happens, where, the athlete won't feel the symptoms right away. And so oftentimes they'll probably keep playing. And,
yeah,
as we know, it's pretty dangerous to be
yeah,
doing that. So it sort of just kind of shed some light on the idea that, mechanism of injury and looking what happened, like as a coach or as a uh, athletic therapist on the sidelines or something, if you see something that you think is a concussion, it's, the 25% chance that they might not be experiencing symptoms, even though they had a concussion. And so just, sort of being cautious when it comes to letting the player return to play, that same day or even the next day, right? Because sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So that
yeah.
was sort of the interesting thing that I learned. I didn't, didn't expect to see a number that high going into it, but again, it's good to kind of understand the symptom onset profile from
Right.
that perspective.
Yeah. So, and not to put any spot or anything here now, but from Dr. Hunt and Christine,
Hmm.
Coach
Yeah.
Dragic, have you learned anything that you did you from anything from them that you were not necessarily surprised by, but points that you thought were just really poignant?
Yeah.
I would say,
Um, I kind of, having done a little bit of kind of my own research before talking to Christine, I kind of had bit of an understanding of how, important coaches actually are when it comes to, setting a sort of standard and culture when it comes to concussion, but just sort of hearing her perspective on it and hearing her perspective on how actually important the leaders on the team are. So like the veterans, for lack of a better word, or the people who are viewed as the leadership core of the team, how important they actually are, and sort of spreading that message throughout the team, I thought was pretty interesting because, only so much a coach can do sometimes. Sometimes it just doesn't register as much as it should then when it comes from a player. And that's a point that that she made. Often you hear a lot about like in sports, so the leadership is so important. Alpha, this player, that player brings a lot off the
Yeah.
ice.
Yeah.
That's usually, said with regards to like play on the ice or on the
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
But just it kind of came up again in this context. We're just like setting a standard, having a culture that supports reporting of concussion and injury in general. The players on the team, the leaders are very important. And so when we, when different bodies go in to educate the teams or to have like workshops, or even the coach says something about how important concussions are, it's almost more important if the players have to buy into that. And the leaders on the team are really important for that process. And that was just sort of a really interesting point that she
Yeah.
brought up. And I was really fascinated by that, to be honest.
And I guess finally, finally, I always say that, but it may not be finally, but for now, let's say,
Yeah.
what is the age range of the athletes you're studying in your research?
Mhm. So being at U of T, and my faculty is pretty closely, so it's like linked with the like David McIntosh Sport Medicine Clinic that's from U of T. So my thesis and my other project as well that I mentioned are focusing only on university athletes. So anywhere from, I guess, 18 to 25, give or take, and around there.
And I know you mentioned in the when you're talking to Dr. Hunt, you did some research with her. You worked with her.
That's right.
And did you study any? Were you guys a Holland Blood Review then?
Yeah. So what I did at Holland Brewery was through actually a school placement program. And I wasn't actually like doing research on participants or with participants. I was actually helping with a knowledge translation website that they were putting together called like the Youth Concussion Awareness Network. I believe it's called UCAN.
Because we should say the Holland Blood Review is a children's hospital in Toronto, Children's Rehabilitation Hospital in Toronto. But sorry, continue.
Yeah. So yeah, they do a lot of great work with the youth population, but the point of that website or web portal, whatever they want to call it, was to sort of facilitate knowledge translation in an understandable way about concussions, like for high school or young athletes in general. So that was the point. Like I said, when it comes to like coaches talking to players, like there's always like a bit of a separation between what the research says and how important the research findings are. I think getting that to the community so that sports organizations, athletes, coaches can understand it. There's, sometimes it's a long process and an inefficient process. And sometimes the knowledge that is generated through research isn't, quickly enough spread to the people who need to hear it, kind of thing, or who it would impact. And so Holland Blue Review and a lot of the people in that lab now who are also affiliated with U of T, that's a lot of their focus is a lot on sort of finding ways to get the knowledge to the people in an understandable and efficient way, which of course is really important.
That's great. Yeah. So actually now this is definitely my final question. You seem to start your podcast with questions to, I would say, break the ice. So I'll ask the one you asked, Aaron. So if you had to have, was it dinner with anybody? Dead or alive? Was it dead or alive or just alive?
I think I said dead or alive.
Dead or alive? Yeah, anybody dead or alive? Who would you have and why? Who you did dinner with and why?
And when I was preparing this question for Dr. Hunt, I was thinking like, who would I even bring? And I didn't actually have like a good answer. So it was good that she didn't ask me at the time, but now you're asking me, so I got to think.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna steal from her, but this is one that I knew I was gonna take before she mentioned
it.
You
can't pick the same one as her.
Sorry?
You can't pick the same person.
I can't. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay. Who did she say?
Well, she said Chris Hadfield, but I could think of another one. I'll say four. I'll say four, just so I don't have, so it's not a cop out. Okay. So Chris Hadfield is a kind of like was a kind of a role model of mine. Like I read his book a few years ago, and just like a lot of the things he says, obviously like astronomy and astronaut stuff is not really applicable to me, but just it's more about like the lessons they learned in general that are really transferable to anything you do in life. So I took a lot from that book. So I'd want to learn more about him and just
the anti-gravity stuff be interesting.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But, I think then, seeing that sports are a pretty big part of my life, my favorite player growing up was Matt Sundin. So I'd probably want to get to know him and just have like, just to chat to him about what it was like to play in Toronto. When I was pretty young when he was in his heyday here, I was like, under 10 or so, like around that age. So
Okay.
like that growing up, he was just like the best to me.
Yeah.
Like, so I would love to just chat to him now. So that's two. I got to keep thinking.
Oh, I only asked you one, but if you want to put four, then go for it.
Oh, we only asked for one. Okay. Well, Matt Sundin would be one. Chris
But I
Hadfield would
mean,
be
but you can
another.
ask for four, yeah. It's easier, or just whoever you want.
Okay. I'll round it out. I will round it out with three, just because that's a good number. I'm trying to think now, but I would probably. This is tough because I just want to pick athletes because I'm a sports junkie, but I feel like that's pretty lame. So I gotta think. Okay, well I'll just pick him because I don't want to kill our time. But I would honestly, like, even though he's like only a year older than me, I'd probably want to take Austin Matthews along with me too.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that would be a good trio because Chris Hadfield's a big Leafs fan too. So I feel like we all have something in common. We'd have some good conversation. So those would be my three. Not super original, but
still better than so. Great. So thanks. And did you have any questions for me or anything? Or anything? I don't know if you're prepared or not, but
well, like when I was like reading on your website yesterday, just like in preparation for today, I just like wanted to know like what drove you to start doing this, to speaking about concussions and brain injury.
Well, as you know, my own brain injury, I see them the distal one, but reason, but there's another word for it. There's a better word for it, but anyway, that one. But also, just as I like writing, like when I went to work in Ottawa, expert development in Canada, I started writing a lot, and I liked writing, and I started the blog because I wanted to write about it's a good way to talk about brain injury and stuff, and good way to get things out there. And I liked writing, and I like writing more humorous ways, but which obviously English is not lending itself to as much. But I thought it was a good way to get it, and then good way to write to talk about my issues and what I was feeling about things, and there's no one else doing it. And that's that I really I didn't really look that hard, honestly. But and then I just podcast as you were saying, you used to say listen to podcasts for a long time and just thought, I'll talk to people, than just write about stuff on my own. It's better to just chat. More reason for me to just meet more people and talk to them than any real. My speech is still a bit just slow and tough sometimes. So like it's better. I find it's better than just writing by myself and just like the conversing with people and finding out more.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. I was reading through like your story online, like again yesterday night. It was pretty damn inspiring if I if I can say that. So
thanks.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, I guess that kind of wraps up this was not really a Brainiac and concussion talk collab totally, but it's kind of like that. So this podcast will be out on Tuesday, December 7th. Right? Yes, that's right. And then Brainiac will have another one. I was going to say Bianchi, but I was like, that's your name / Brainiac. But Brainiac will have a podcast out before Christmas break, I guess, for the holiday season. And I'll have another one out in another Concussion Talk podcast out on December 14th. So thank you all for listening. And thank you, Stefan, so much. And we'll definitely be hearing from you again before the end of the year. So thanks again. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Nick. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.